Hello, I'm Adam Wren,
And I'm Dasha Burns. It is Thursday, July 24th.
and this is the Playbook Podcast. We probably don't have to tell you, but the big story driving the day is the fallout from the Wall Street Journal's bombshell that Attorney General Pam Bondi told President Donald Trump in May that his name was one of many in the Epstein files. The story published at 3:08 yesterday afternoon and completely took over Washington.
Yeah, so immediately after this dropped, I started making phone calls to some of my folks in and around the White House. And look, the line was largely playing down this story. What I heard from both White House allies and people inside of the White House is basically they don't think there's anything new here. They feel like, of course, it's not a surprise that the president was mentioned in the Epstein files. They told me everyone knew that Trump, alongside many other high profile names, had associated with Jeffrey Epstein, that we'd already seen pictures of them together, that this was nothing new. And this is basically sensationalized reporting from the Wall Street Journal, an outlet with which they are already in a legal battle, and really trying to emphasize that if there had been there in these materials that implicated President Trump in anything serious, that previous administrations, particularly the last administration with President Biden behind the desk, would have released that information to damage Trump. So they are downplaying this and are frustrated that this is still in the news cycle and desperately want to change the conversation.
Yeah, what I can't quite square about that response that you're hearing from White House sources is that I don't disagree with them. The pictures of Jeffrey Epstein with Donald Trump have been circulating for years. And, this is a president who has been through a criminal hush money trial. And I don't think the public has any sort of misgivings about his past and the kind of people that he's spent time with. So if this is really old news, Dasha, as your White House sources suggest, why not just let this all come out with Trump alongside many other names? No suggestion of criminality here, just the happenstance of having this relationship with Epstein.
Yeah, look, I mean, I think there have been a number of unforced errors in how the White House has handled this. And even one of their close allies admitted that to me in a story we published yesterday, basically saying that this was a problem of their own making, both in the propagation of this conspiracy for years, including on the campaign trail, and how the Justice Department and the FBI handled the rollout of information. And now they are doing this sort of drip, drip, rather than kind of rip the band-aid off with this news cycle. What I've heard from a number of sources is this is an issue that has really put the White House on the back foot and has really paralyzed the president and his team in a way that is just extremely rare, if not altogether unprecedented. And so you've seen them kind of really struggle to navigate. And I think you heard the president say this himself in public too. Like, he doesn't want to release information that is going to cause a bunch more conspiracies around all these different characters when, according to all of the officials involved here, there doesn't seem to be a clear cut there. It's not a client list of all of these names that were involved in the crimes that Jeffrey Epstein committed. And we're already seeing people taking whatever may be in these files and extrapolating. And the point that was made to me by White House officials, which I think is a fair one, is his name is in there. That doesn't mean that President Trump did anything wrong, or that any of the other high profile names that are in those documents are guilty of any wrongdoing. It's complicated and it's messy, and it certainly hasn't been helped by the way that the White House has executed the drip of information here.
Two other points I want to cover before we pivot to the next story. And one is right now, the next phase of this story seems to be who knew what when. The Wall Street Journal reported that this briefing with Bondi and Trump happened in May. There's also a tantalizing nugget that FBI Director Kash Patel told others that Trump's name was in this trove of documents. I have one source who was in the Oval Office with Trump, and they essentially said that they heard Trump fretting about this, that he obviously knew that he was innocent, said as much, but did say, quote, "They're going to accuse me of some funny business." And so seemed to be fretting his involvement here.
And again, that's also not surprising from a guy who has been indicted multiple times, has had endless battles with the courts and with the court of public opinion on any number of scandals. So this is a little bit par for the course for President Trump, but given the obsession that his base has had with the story, it takes on that extra layer for him.
Final point on this before we move on. This happened right as Congress was skipping town early. Some of the members that Politico, our colleagues, have talked to opined on this, didn't think much of this disclosure, wanted to pivot beyond it. It seems to me like this is just going to make it all the more of a topic back in their districts as they go back home. What did you make of the timing here?
It's not good. I mean, it's not good. And you better bet that because this is such an internet native scandal, that there will be videos of town halls that will then be circulated, that will go viral, that are going to be then exacerbated and circulated by Democrats who want to take advantage of this. So they're escaping the story in Washington, but they're going to have to face it in their hometowns, in their districts. There's really nowhere to hide from this right now.
Well, enough about the Epstein files for now. I'm sure we'll be talking about
I was
this.
going to say, is it a no? Because I have a feeling we'll be coming back to it.
Yeah, that's right. We'll be talking a lot about this. Also happening today, President Trump and administration officials will tour the Federal Reserve's headquarters as the White House ratchets up pressure on Jerome Powell over the $2.5 billion renovation of the central bank's facilities. This seems like a really especially reality TV show designed set piece in which there's a lot of tension and people are going to be watching this closely.
Well, Trump loves himself a real estate tour. Come on. I think that the president has made his feelings pretty clear about Jerome Powell. He has been restrained in the actual action of firing him. There are a lot of people in the White House that understand how terrible that would be for markets and all sorts of reasons. However, it seems pretty clear that he is set on making Powell's life in that role as miserable as humanly possible.
And then finally on Capitol Hill, there's a flurry of committee work as Congress aims to start heading home for the August recess. The Senate Judiciary Committee is set to consider former Fox News host Jeanine Pirro's nomination for U.S. Attorney in the District of Columbia. Meanwhile, the Senate Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs Committee will consider Paul Ingrassia's controversial nomination to lead the office of the special counsel. He's been seen as being on thin ice for a number of reasons. We reported yesterday in Playbook that Senator Tom Tillis, the Republican of North Carolina, is already a no, and he's attributed his stance on January 6th and a number of other things. And it doesn't sound like he is in on Mr. Ingrassia. Well, as always, we try to end the show with something a little bit different from the Playbook newsletter. And Dasha, the Wall Street Journal, is really showing off their scooping ability this week. They reported last night that former President Joe Biden sold his memoir for $10 million. It's a lot of money, of course, but less than the $15 million Bill Clinton received for his and less than the $60 million or so that Obama received for his.
To me right now, oof is just the feeling around everything to do with Biden. We had Hunter's appearance this week. We've had the former president inject himself in moments where it was just not something that Democrats wanted or needed. And unfortunately for the Biden family, I think this memoir just is on track for the oof, just like so much else.
The Democrats have been looking for a compelling figure who can sit for these sorts of YouTube interviews for 3 hours on end. Their own Joe Rogan, maybe Hunter Biden is the Democrats.
Listen, Hunter does seem to have the stamina for a long interview. I don't know if that's the mascot they want out there, but, he can talk. That's for sure.
I will say that Hunter Biden basically took over my timeline for about 24 hours. That's the only thing I saw.
It was unavoidable.
Well, as always, send us your tips, birthdays, or spotted moments to playbook@politico.com. Dasha, as always, this was super fun.
Thanks for hanging out.
And that's all for today's show, but we have much more news and analysis in today's Playbook newsletter, which you can find at politico.com/playbook. We'll be back tomorrow. Have a great Thursday.
Thanks for listening.